I was gonna talk to you and Betsy to get this figured out.
Once you bust it down, 33% via BTS, that's something, right? But the mechanism's already full. But I don't also want to give the impression that we're bullying that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I give a Paul's act, you know, because that's not the intent here. The intent is to fix the problem. You know, and they have a vested interest because they've paid over the years into the maintenance of that equipment. And it needs to function so that, you know, they can continue to pump and push their sewage our way. Our responsibility is to operate and maintain it the best that we can. So,
No, because if you're spent out, you take it out of fund balance, cash and bank.
Right, but then figure out that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So there's a couple of ways to spin it.
All right, that's what I like to hear.
in you know, the sewer authority or the
Yeah.
a portion of that project is the cleaning of the west collection fees, and the sewer authority, you know, said, listen, can't find a different funding source. We'll at least give you the money for the cleaning portion of that. So there's an appetite on many different levels, you know, to be contributors to this. But as far as funding it in full, this is the best vehicle I think we have to get this done.
Thanks.
Basil, what are you talking about?
Oh, so we're just kind of just, you know, waiting over the rehab and incinerator.
The 750,000 that we're looking at for the incinerator, that's coming entirely from ARP. So I'm trying to figure out a way that we can through the fair share from the other tributaries. We can get a 47% return back on that into the sewer fund if, you know, if we station it the right way instead of just cutting the check and, you know, putting it all on our own shoulders. So it's been a lot of time days if they're trying to figure that out.
You're gonna be in charge of the sewer treatment plant now? That's great.
I think you're Sunday's liaison, right?
I know, but I've always trusted the.
But Chuck and I, when you were down there, we talked, we had many times, Chuck and down there, spent well over 4 hours. So, you know, we talked about the situation with incinerator, you know, what our plan of action is as far as, you know, repairing this. And walked through the plant, you know, showed him every nook and cranny, and came out of it on the other side. I think he did with general understanding of what we do down there. And the importance of that science, and how nobody ever looks down that way because it's just an operation that always needs to just go and never end. But at any point in time, there's a million moving parts, you know, and my crew is down there every day making sure that it runs so that people in the city of Erie can continue to do what they do, industry can do what they do, and 7 tributaries can pump and push their sewage to us to process. We have an issue. The issue is, you know, the incinerators need some help. We have to meet strict, you know, requirements for EPA and DEP air quality guidelines. And there are some replacement time repairs that, you know, we put together the last year and a half, both with several consultants. We've had G-Vault Incinerator RX come in and basically break down 3 different informational stack tests on both incinerators to drill down to the problem. Yeah.
I'm trying to get Jackie on.
So at the end of the day, we have a plan, and budgetary number was about $750,000. by members of the school board, prior to the city receiving our funds, if there was an appetite for the administration to look to possibly help fund the project. I couldn't think of a more important one at that point in time. It wasn't being handled by the capital improvement projects that are already undergoing. Then this one that had manifested itself at the end of 2020. So I had a student conference with the mayor and his staff. I put it out there, and it's worked its way all the way to Utah. So I guess today I'm just asking you to look at that, ask me some questions, and I'll tell you, what I can based on what I know and the benefits of that particular project to get us where we need to be. I'm relegated to one incinerator. So incinerator number 2.
Is that a bad thing?
I know you understand. Is that a bad thing?
Yes, it's a horrible.
Okay, so take your hat off. How much air?
No, I haven't. This was just on the ride up. No.
Those who spending the day with me.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Is it a bad thing? It's a very bad thing, and here's why. A plant that size, we have redundancy. So we have 2 incinerators for a reason. If you have a mechanical malfunction in incinerator 2, you have to go to incinerator 1. But it's not as simple as your stove. You can't go and just turn on the burner and let it go. It takes 4 to 5 days to keep these things up properly. During that transitional period, you have to then process sludge through our E1 section, which is our backup section. Therefore, generating line cake. Line plate cake is the same sludge cake that would go on with the belt that would be the incinerator, except it's not burned into the fuel. So now you're paying an exponential cost to haul the line cake away because the ratio is about for every 1 can of incinerated ash is 8 cans of line cake. But 46 bucks a ton, it adds up quickly. But once again, that's the process. So I would run E1. But I only have 1 E1. I don't have a backup to my backup. I know that sounds kind of perplexing, but I just don't. If something were to happen to that particular piece of equipment, not even saying essentially, call it a feed system and shuts me down, and I don't have that other incinerator, I can't process sludge. Now, all of a sudden, I'm going to be out of compliance with my NIFIDs permit. And then we're going to have a situation where the potential for fines are going to stack up. And remember, this is not just a city of Erie problem, this is also Erie Sewer Authority problem because we are co-permittees with the authority. So whatever we do on the operating plan that effectively affects the plant also affects the authority. So we're on the hook. So what my job is, my staff does, is to keep that place ticking along. So having one incinerator and not being able to go over to the other one is a huge problem. And we've been working on it diligently since December of 2020 to get all the information we possibly can to fix this. And we have that path. We just need the money to do it.
I'm in favor. I just was.
Oh, no. And you know.
Yeah, you know that you made me a believer when we went on that tour a couple of years ago. I think you were the one that led us.
Yeah, it was.
Kathy Shot and Kaz and
I think Mr. Seneca got 3rd degree burn.
We saw the nitty gritty of how they.
Well, when you go through it, right, and you see the start to the finish product, and you look at the effluent water, and I showed Chuck today. When you look at the effluent water, and it looks like the same water that comes out of the tap, that's the end result. That's what the facility does nonstop. And you know, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You know, the greatest regional asset we have is that lake. You know, and we're tasked with being stewards to the environment, not just water quality, but air quality as well, and solid management. All of that happens at 6 feet Port Asset. Not a facility that anybody drives down there to take pictures next to. You know, we may have tours, college students and stuff that come down there because they have interest in something. It's not glamorous, it's not sexy, but it's incredibly essential. And it's a critical piece of infrastructure that cannot fail. It absolutely cannot fail. I could not close the influent gate to that facility at any point in time. So I do everything I possibly can and my staff to keep it.
Question, so what fuels this incinerator? How's it feel?
Natural gas. Yeah. So, and part of the scope of this would be to perform what's called a conversion of double zero part, which would change the way that we burn in the incinerator right now we are bound by the US EPA MAC compliance guidelines. We qualify the furnaces based on burn zones in parts 3 and 4. And what we have right now is we have minimum set point temperatures in those parts. So let's say we have to burn sludge at a minimum of 1,300 degrees. Regardless of the dryness of the sludge quality, even if it doesn't ignite itself, we still have to turn the burners up to meet that threshold. So we like to call it the blowtorch on a campfire type velocity. So constantly firing those burners and putting in natural gas just to meet compliance. What part of this we have to do is convert the number 1 and number 2 parts into basically afterburners, and then we can qualify via MAP rules on exit temperature, which would then mean we could turn down the gas on 3 and 4, and you're going to see a cost savings and follow this. Also, too, the afterburners provide, which I feel is probably the most beneficial effect, is the reduction of VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds. These are constituents that are released into the air, SO2, NOx, hydrocarbons, direct impact, as I say, on acid rain. You know, these are the types of things that we deal with in the permits are structured in such a way that when we comply, we have to look at these constituents, these pollutants, and we have to meet the parameters set by the DEP and the EPA so we can run these incinerators. If after stack testing the numbers come back and they don't work, can't turn them on. Now, as unfortunate as it is to speak to, the situation with Erie Coke is a perfect example of neglecting. It was a matter of knowing you had a problem and not reacting to it. And it was the upper echelon that failed to do what they needed to do, to put the money where it was needed most in order to meet their obligation to the EPA and the DEP to keep that facility running. They made a conscious decision not to do that. And subsequently, there was nothing else that they could do. And of course, we had issues on our side of that. But
And so people could be held criminally liable for this also.
well, if I were to run that incinerator right now, I would be in violation of my clean air permit. And my license hangs on that wall, and I am the responsible official. And so, yes, I don't know if it would be handcuffs and a prison term, but I don't want to lose any more thinking about that.
Right, I just saw it somewhere I'm trying to think if it was one of the Coke plants, where some people were actually charged.
If you're altering records or if you're doing things like that, absolutely. Absolutely. But the situation right now is that we're just not running that incinerator.
Okay, so while we have you here, might as well stop stormwater too, right? That goes into the sewer, right?
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. If you want to talk stormwater, best place to start, Chuck and AJ in engineering. They've taken the lead on that.
Right, I understand that, but I was just talking about our permitting. I know it's different for the plant. But the end result is the combined conglomerate of people standing there responsible for what goes in the lake.
Right.
And so I just wondered how this impacts that or doesn't impact it at all, or
I can address that.
Yeah.
So part of the system captures the stormwater, and that stormwater is conveyed to the treatment. That's the combination sewers.
25071.
There was a consent decree, and we tried to separate the sanitary from the storm, but there's still
Does it work? Paul,
still a portion of the system.
Does it work?
Stormwater
No,
right
there's
to the
gonna
treatment
have to be
plant,
another
and it gets
one next
treated as
time
discharged.
to make it
The
expensive
straight
revenue
storm sewer
replacement.
gets collected and discharged into Presque Isle Bay or one of the tributary streams. So the only way you can control that is to keep the materials off the street the best we can, because once it gets into the system, it's getting conveyed out into Lake Erie or Presque Isle Bay. In the past several years, we've installed several litter bins that catch potable plastics. And we have a PA grant this year, $350,000 to put 2 more of those devices on Garrison Run down by the treatment plant. We have one on Mill Creek, and we also have one on Cascade, or 12th and Green Garden. So those type of devices help keep the materials from getting into Presque Isle Bay.
Now, to go back real quick, that's not what I'm saying. The MS4 permit, what comes into the plant is treated and sent out to the lake. Separating the sewers would be of importance too, because you have what's called I&I, inflow and infiltration. So the more stormwater that gets into sanitary, we're treating water that doesn't need to be treated. So if we had a completely sealed off sanitary system, some of the newer townships we have, then you wouldn't have this issue of treating I&I. You know, the infrastructure here is, you know, early 1900s, 1800s. You know, we have that situation right now. So a portion of that flow is infiltration. But what they're talking about doing is, you know, doing lining, sealing off these things, making it more efficient as far as being able to send the proper flow in the proper direction.
And a lot of the online communities have done those
Yes,
type of
yeah.
projects,
Yeah.
because they're getting billed on the metering, so they went and invested the money in their system to try to stop the infiltration of the groundwater to stormwater, thus lowering their bills what they pay to the city.
So as they send flow to the city of Erie, we have meters out in the collection system. And so we build them accordingly based on what they send us for transportation treatment. So if they go out and they do extensive relining of their sewer system, and they stop groundwater from leaking into the sanitary sewers, then they start to see a reduction in their plant flow, which means they pay less. So there's a return on investment. So I think anything each element in engineering is doing as far as stormwater management can go a long way to start turning around the city's percentage of what we treat as opposed to, say, townships. So, yeah, it has a direct impact. And then, of course, too, that means less liquid that I have to try to incinerate. You know, water is what it is. You have to boil it and get it out. So, yeah, there's a systemic relationship between what MS4 is doing.
Okay. I think that's all for now. Just, yeah, that's all for now.
So Paul, back to you. Everything's all sorted out with that. It puts us
Step
2 weeks
one,
behind on
yes.
it? Okay.
Step one, and there's gonna be, next meeting, we'll have to do the rest of what has to be done.
So I mean, we can afford 2 weeks to save 350,000? Yeah, great.
Well, next time, there's gonna have to be an appropriation ordinance in the sewer fund, and the ordinances have 2 readings.
Okay.
And
Can you
that's
wait a
fine.
month?
I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there, folks. I mean, you know,
What's being proposed, because I don't
We're
know.
gonna take the money from ARP, what we were calling it on your agenda, wastewater treatment plant incinerator project, and we're gonna call it revenue replacement, because we have more than enough availability in the revenue replacement line item, based on that calculation, that we can use it as revenue replacement. We're gonna then move the revenue replacement money into the sewer fund, and then the sewer fund is gonna appropriate this extra money as an expense into their repair and maintenance line item.
Okay. So you're saying we have to revise how we.
This thing, yeah, Lori, I called Jackie, and Jackie sent me the account number. She would like it to be used in the revenue, or, you know, in the ARP stuff.
Okay.
Because I can't call Lisa, unfortunately. Lisa's skiing in Wyoming,
Okay.
so I guess we all should be jealous or happy that we're not skiing. And I'm not a skier. So, yeah, there's a couple steps that have to be done to do this. But, so tonight you'll approve the transfer from, ARP just the blanket expenditure account into the specific revenue replacement. That's replacing revenue that we did lose in the sewer fund. As we all know, we were about $1 million or so down in the sewer fund last year. So that'll replace that there, and then we can move that there and appropriate it and spend it.
Okay. I know we need to do the finance committee meeting, but Basil, are you gonna stay for the finance committee meeting too, or are we? Because I did want to just ask you.
yeah, we weren't going to, but I mean,
No, you don't.
yeah, if you have questions.
No, my only question was just, I noticed, the Erie County Health Department report that, I mean, we know that cases of COVID have dropped dramatically,
Yes.
but there's now a slight spike in the, virus being shed in the wastewater, I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, and Dr. Nadworny and I spoke yesterday about that.
So what does that mean?
Well, you shed the virus through your stool, and the sampling that's done by BioBot picks up on the RNA signature of that virus, and then they apply formulas to it, and they give you a count of how many people may be infected. That doesn't necessarily translate into what you're going to see as far as the numbers being reported by the county health department, because you could be asymptomatic. You could be shedding it and not know it. Or you could be sick and just never report that you're sick.
Yeah.
But it trends incredibly well.
It's amazing.
Over the last year or so that I've been involved with this project, Dr. Nadler, the amount of work that this gentleman put into it. When you see the peaks and valleys, especially with the Omicron, and how significant an impact that had, and how fast that those viral levels shot through the wastewater. Now, this is not a new science. I mean, they've used this during the original SARS outbreak in 2003 in China. They use this type of tracking for like chemicals of emerging concern, opioids, and pharmaceuticals in the water. This is nothing new. But they have fine-tuned it to be able to pick up this signature. It's not DNA, it's RNA. Almost, I wouldn't say with pinpoint accuracy, but enough that you can get a very good understanding of what's happening in the community at large that's served by the facility. So the only thing we can pick up is the 200,000 plus people a day that are flushing toilets and using our systems. What's happening further out, can't really say. But there has been talk about some of the smaller communities deploying this type of stuff. But yeah, remarkable with its efforts.
And we were one of the early enablers to be able to do that, I think, when BioBot first went out with this proposal.
Yes.
I think Erie was one of the first ones.
One of the first,
Yeah.
and they use our data internationally. Matter of fact, they'd ask for permission.
Yeah. I just, when I saw because you can see it, you can go down, and then I guess I'm saying it because I don't want people to think, hey, it's over, because I think that's kind of the message that's being sent.
I guess for me, it's just a matter, I just look at the data. So I make my decision based on how, I'm going to mask, I'm going to wash my hands, I'm going to have respect for people, and I try not to let my guard down. At the time, I may slip. So as far as what people may or may not perceive from the data, and whether or not they want to look at it and think that it means anything, that's going to be on them. However, I will tell you that based on what you see in the hospitals, talk to people in the medical field, Dr. Nadworny, you see the numbers that are reported to the health department, and you see that trend that comes out from BioBot, it's shockingly accurate. So wastewater testing, for what it's worth, depending on how you want to utilize it as a predictor, or just something that's just there for, I guess, general consumption of information, I feel it's a very worthwhile project, and I think it was, well done.
One thing, I know how old our infrastructure is, and someday it may have to all be replaced. So, is anyone looking at, like you're talking about waste treatment and sewage, where like in Europe, the stuff from the sink and stuff goes one place, and the stuff from the toilet goes another place, and like in America, you just put it all together, send it to you.
All I can tell you is that the sewer authority in the city of Erie, when it comes to looking for capital projects, like we're in the middle of a 5-year capital project now, they try to look at every angle. Is there any discussion about separating gray water, which would be, say, your dish soap and washing it, as opposed to maybe fecal matter that comes through your toilet? I've never had those discussions with anybody. That would be a conversation that would include a massive amount of, I would think, engineering and think tank type people to take a city of this age with the type of infrastructure and be able to do a project like that would be probably in the billions of dollars. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had a discussion that forward thinking, but certainly worth having.
Well, thank you for your time tonight.
Does anybody have anything else?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for your time, everybody.
So, That saves 300. So that's what I was gonna say. How
Yeah, so that was a big part of the discussion today, was that in any expense that would be happening, whether maintenance or capital, there would be fair share contributions from the tributaries. And by us using ARP money, there was not going to be a fair share. The burden was going to be entirely on us. So by shifting that in the way that Basil and I talked, which we didn't understand exactly how to make it work, that's what Paul comes with. By doing that, we are now getting reimbursed for 47% reimbursed. 51%?
Yeah, last year was the first time in about 10 years that,
Yeah.
we did better.
Yeah.
If you wanna call it better, but,
So take
yeah.
750,000 divided in half, that's $375,000 we just saved just now. From as revenue brought in from tributaries as we spent ARP money. So, yeah.
Yeah, Chuck, that'll be part of next year's reconciliation.
Yeah, right.
So-
Next year we'll get an extra 375,000.
Yeah, correct.
So, yeah, it's pretty exciting. I mean, that was the long conversation today. And I'm on the authority for sewers. I've spent 6 hours with this guy in the last 2 days.
Nice. Okay, I sent out a new book or pages today. I don't know if anybody looked at the SharePoint to see it. And this thing, before we get into the December numbers, so I tell you how everything ended. I just, as a 4-year information kind of thing, I put together a little, few pages on how revenue trends and how expenditure trends have been moving the last 4 years. The first page is just basically a roll-up of the general fund and how it did this year's budget versus the last 4 years. The second page is all the revenues, general fund revenue line items. The third page is how each department, city council, city clerk, mayor, property management, and so on did the last 4 years. And then what we call the roll-up, the line item, how we did overtime, shift differential, salaries, and employee payouts. And then the last thing, as we talked about, and then we approved the change in the method or the timing of real estate tax collection. I thought it was important for us to look at the very top of this last page shows the real estate tax collection by month over the last 4 years. And there's actually a line item that shows there, and again, I'm giving you this and you haven't had a chance to look at it because I think I had Kim post it this afternoon. But just know this, that in 2021, when we moved the face date back to the middle of the summer, by the time face date came around, we collected 96.5% of the real estate taxes. So it always gets a little iffy in the February, March month with money coming in, but that was the best year we've had in the last 4 years. In 2020, when face was June, we collected 95.6% of the levy. In 19, 93%, and in 18, we collected 92%. So those couple of years where, we have that May date, we're only collecting 92 or 93%, and we moved it back and people were paying more. That hurts, financially, that hurts my cash flows a little bit because people aren't paying their penalties, which is not a good thing, but at least it helped last year. And I don't know, we talked about the budget and how the real estate tax collections came in. Now over the last 10 years, the collections have always hung around 90 to 91% of the levy every year, the collected money. But the last couple of years, the collections have gone up, and because our trending had been poor in 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, we've lowered the budgeted percentage of levy.
That you expected?
Yeah, that we expected.
Okay.
So we lowered the budget, but collections went up. So it looks like we did a great job collecting, which, it shows here the collection of levy, the last 4 years, the collection of levy at the end of the year has been 91.5, 91.4, 91, and 90.04. So we're gonna collect 90 to 91% of all those bills that go out, no matter what happens, how it happens, why it happens, where it happens. But the last few years, the last 4 years or so, the collection percentage, I mean, it was in the 89, 89, 89. In the last 4 years, people are paying on time because they're sick of paying that 10% penalty. So I'd like to see everyone pay their bill in January because it would make cash flows a lot easier. But what you did as a group should be fine. I mean, we can make it work cash flow wise.
We'll have one more year of data too now.
Yes, correct.
From this year.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, to see what happens.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we go through the year, we'll be able to show you what happened, how it happened, and why it happened. So it just, that's the big thing to remember when we start talking about collection numbers and all that. The biggest thing is the budget is a moving number, 2021, 2019, 18. It's what are we collecting based on the levy. So just wanted everybody to know that. And we can look, and you know, I know I talk about that at all the finance committee meetings, and I'll bring it up each month, but what's happening is people are paying their bills, and that's good for us. Well, Jasmine, you said that I did.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying
no,
in
absolutely,
general.
you're absolutely
That's
correct,
what you're
yeah.
getting at. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I mean, that's what happens. So this document, any questions about this, you got it in your inbox this afternoon. Please take a look at it. You know, any questions, give me a call. Now, the big one I think we want to talk about tonight are the December numbers and how we did last year. These are, again, unaudited. The auditors just started today, but these are the cash-based numbers from the accounting system, all the money Kaz put through the window over in his department. So I did my little notes along with it, and as you look through these things, I want to go through quite a few of these line items to take a look at. But the biggest thing is, and this is the one you got a couple days ago, the biggest thing to look at here is we took in last year $93 million, and we spent $92.7 million. So from beginning of the year to end of the year, we had a $300,000 surplus. Now, when you compare that to the budget, that's what I wanted to go through that. In looking at that, we budgeted $97 million last year. And it sounds as though we didn't do a good job because we only collected 93. But when we prepared the 21 budget, we were still working on the Water Authority lease prepayment, and we were expecting to get about $6 million for this budget in that money. Well, in the time frame of budget preparation to end of year to beginning of year, we consummated the deal with the Water Authority. We got the lease prepayment money. We paid down the debt. So we didn't get that $6 million of cash. So if you take $6 million of cash that we didn't get from the Water Authority that we normally would have got away from the 97 we budgeted, we should have only received $91 million last year, and we got 93. So we had a pretty good year. And I harped about this, that we were told by the powers that be in Washington that unemployment was going to be horrible, and in Erie, again, I go back to the LST tax. The LST tax, the dollar a week we pay, we received a lot less money than we were normally collected on an annual basis. We only got about 94% of the last 5 years average. So people were not working. But the income tax and the special pension levy, that extra money we all pay in our paychecks, those went up. So the only thing, again, I'd say, unfortunately, the higher income people were working and the lower income people were not working. So by you pushing back that face date and giving people an extra chance to pay those bills and not making them worry about the penalties, we're helping people out there.
Right.
So hopefully it bounces back this year, but, yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, and is the LST tax was down, but the income tax and the special levy were up. People, people with better paying
Was
jobs were
amusement,
working.
wasn't amusement tax, didn't it fall, that fall a little bit short too?
Yes.
Um,
Well,
I mean, I know we had cut it back
yeah,
anyhow.
we cut it in half, Liz. We were normally getting about $250,000 a year, going back, 2019, 18, 17. And last year, we collected about $126,000. So only half as many shows, games, events as normal. So,
But there's nothing that this early, or even looking at last year, that is cause for concern right now?
no, in going through the revenue numbers, when you look through here, we had budgeted, and Andy Zimmerman does a good job talking to all the contractors and getting an understanding of what, what building is gonna go on and what jobs are happening. So we budget accordingly, and we talk to him about what's happening. The building permits were at 149% of the budget. So there was a lot of building going on. And I don't, some residential, some commercial, but there was a lot of building going on.
And that's definitely the year I've spent the most fixing my house in my entire life.
Because you're
I
home
didn't
a
go on
lot.
any vacations.
Yeah,
I've
you're
worked
home a
lot
lot.
of money.
So in looking at these numbers, there's a lot of 105s and 149s and 101s. There's really, Liz, to answer your question, there was nothing that concerned us greatly in looking at these numbers, that there wasn't, this one was 82%. Well, we know why it was 82%. It was a timing issue, the pension reimbursement of Teresa Pomorski's salary. This one was, well, this is a bad one. Pennsylvania, we normally get from the state about $70,000 a year in our shared, the alcohol tax, the beer tax. And last year we only got 21% of the money. Normally we get 70,000, we got 15,000. So I don't know if people weren't going to the beer distributor and buying beer or what, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
that seems shocking.
cable TV was up last year. The cable TV franchise fee was up. Now, I have cable, I don't have Dish. So I paid a little bit more last year, but usage is up too. So I don't have anything in this book, and when we talked at budget time about the revenues, I don't see anything that was of concern other than a huge, relapse into a bad COVID state and nobody goes to work again.
I'll pretend I'm somebody else, like David Brennan. Is there anything going on with the parking authority? What's happening with that?
We had a meeting about a month ago or so, and Renee and Kathy Doyle have been working on a response. I don't want to say a response to what they had talked about. So we sat down, the police, Public Works, myself, the mayor was there. So it's in the works.
Yeah, maybe you could just fill in the new people on that, but also, sort of maybe mention the immediate problem that the parking authority is facing. Mayor, remember we heard, in terms of no employees to be able to ticket those cars that were.
They must have got someone, because we got a ticket on my street for the first time in a while.
They had nobody to do the residential ticketing.
Yeah, normally they have 5 or 6 people and they were down to 1.
Yeah, so Chris Friday was desperately trying to hire some people.
So they're down to 1 as far as employees are out.
Out driving around in the cars.
Right, but I'm saying that they only have 1 now?
Right now,
or-
well, they might have hired some, this was as of last week that we heard that.
Yeah, so the question was, were they out for sicknesses or something, or we just have 1?
Couple retired, yeah, I
I
think
thought they were actual vacancies.
yeah, I think, Michael, there was only 1 on staff.
push that out on the city website, that the parking authority is hiring, if you would, sir. Perhaps someone do that.
Frank was here.
Because we want them to be fully employed. We want those jobs.
So, I'm sorry,
Oh, so do you know what their starting rate is?
Michael, I do not know. I have their budget upstairs, but I don't, off the top of my head. I know they're not unionized as we are, $15 an hour,
Yeah.
12, 18. I don't know the answer. I shouldn't even spout a number off.
Okay, so, yeah, so we want to make sure that gets pushed out to the community.
So the first 2 pages, the revenues. Now, the next 2 pages after that, pages 4 and 5 show the general fund expenditures. Again, we budgeted $97 million. Because of the mayor's, the agreement we made with the water authority, and got that money for the lease prepayment, we paid down our debt. We saved $4.5 million in debt payments last year because of the long-term restructuring we did. So if you take that $4.5 million away from the 97 we budgeted, you come up with a number of $93.3 million that the budget would have been. And as you look at the spending, we spent $92.7 million. So we budgeted 93.3 and we spent 92.7. So on an expenditure basis, we were about $500,000 to the good in spending. And when you look through the line items, I mean, overtime, they were $760 over, and that's police, fire, and public works, everybody. Everything pretty much, salaries was over by 15,000, and seasonals was under by 95. You can see that we were pretty much, we had a very good year expenditure-wise, saving $500,000. So, and Liz, to answer the question before you ask, the only thing that's really ever concerning, because we budget the salaries, and we know what people are going to make. Overtime, historically, we know how many hours. You see in the budget handouts we give how many hours the police and fire are going to use, and they've been. I mean, the police department uses 23,000 hours every year, and that's the way it is. And the fire department a little less. So we get a good handle on that. The bad one is last year, if you go down to the line item on fluids and fuels, in 2020 we spent $460,000, and last year we spent $787,000 in gasoline. So that's gasoline and diesel. So both of those things, and I saw in the paper today, and I haven't bought gas in a week or a couple of days, but gas is up to $3.70 a gallon. Now, we pay on a different market. We pay on the national market where, we bid it out and you as a group approve that contract. But gasoline and diesel are up also. So that's the only one that concerns me. But last year was a horrible year as far as the price of gas. And we were still, within and I know $70,000 is a big number, but when we're spending $750,000 in gas, we did okay, and there was a lot of plowing going on. And we've had, when Mr. Mulvihill was still here, had him come down a couple of years ago and talk about the garbage trucks and the plow trucks. And those things only get 2, 3, 4 miles to a gallon. So it's we go through a lot of fuel.
That's why we need to start really looking into the hybrids, the diffusions and the sizes.
We went to a seminar with the National Fuel people 2 or 3 years ago, myself from finance, and AJ was running the garage at that time. And we looked into, there's a way where we can retrofit the trucks. Now, the problem is it's so stinking expensive to do it, and at that time, the price of all this stuff was so low. If it's so low, you're retrofitting these things at thousands upon thousands of dollars a pop. It did not make financial sense at that time. And then 5-7 years ago, National Fuel was trying to get everybody to switch over to compressed gas in these trucks, and somehow they talked the state into giving out these credits, and then the credits went away. But the EMTA, they have,
Gas buses.
yes, they have pumps up there. So, Jasmine, it's always something we're looking at, because it's a way we can save. I mean, we're spending $750,000 on gasoline, or when I say gasoline and diesel.
So the diesel contract, do you know when, like, how often those come up?
Yes, I do.
Ballparkish?
I don't know. It's in the budget handout book.
Okay.
If anybody brought their handout book, I put those contracts in there. I don't know, Chuck.
All right. So biodiesel, we've got one of the 15 largest biodiesel plants in the nation right on our bay.
Okay.
We could do up to 20% biodiesel in those settings. Most of the gas prices are going up because of the Ukraine situation stuff. I mean, but biodiesel, and that would be 20% green.
Yes.
Green and renewable. I mean, I'm not even talking about cost savings at that point. I'm just excited to support a local business and be more environmentally friendly. So, anyways,
Yeah,
whenever we get to that
I
point,
mean,
I don't even know how we address that.
it's been a couple of years since we've looked into that.
Yeah.
We'll get on it again. Whenever the price of this stuff, I don't want to say is advantageous, the salesmen come. They show up en masse with any kind of promotion, any kind of, anything that would be advantageous to them to sell to us, which would save us a couple bucks.
But the trucks will still be as effective though if you went to, what's the,
No, I don't know that it.
it's kind of like,
They
gas,
can
like,
slow those
like electric
trash
lawnmowers
trucks down.
versus gas lawnmowers. Electric just doesn't do the same thing
No.
as gas. I mean, so,
Off the record, they can slow those those trash trucks down. One went up my street the other day. I thought I had a semi, like from a movie, like dropping. I was like, it was going at least 50 miles an hour. And I started to follow it and get its number, but I didn't want to do that. But they're going too fast. They are, so to your point, they don't need as many, what they call them, under the hood as much.
I'm not talking about as fast, I'm saying, but they.
Yeah, with the power.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I'm saying, they don't need as many, what do they call them, under the hood?
Horsepower?
They don't need as many horses in order to be an effective garbage pickup.
What's next?
Next is the sewer fund, and I just wanted to give a little overview on the sewer fund, as we just talked about the sewer fund and we had Basil here. The biggest revenue line item in the sewer fund is the fee we all pay. And again, as unfortunate as it is, for the 10th year in a row, our water usage, which your sewer billing is based on your water usage, our water usage, us, not commercial, not residential, not government, our water usage as residents of the city went down again. So the only good thing is we're now using, the municipalities are now going to spend more and give us a little bit more money each year in their expenditure portion. But we're, we went down to about 70, the number, it went down again,
Right.
our usage.
Residents are considering water.
Yes, so, when revenues are conserving water, you and I aren't paying as high a bill. Well, if we're not paying as high a bill, we can only get so much money from Mill Creek, Fairview, Northeast, Wesleyville, and such. So somebody has to make that up, and unfortunately, that's us as taxpayers. So that was a big thing. We budgeted last year $15.4 million in the sewer fund, in the residential billings, and we only collected $14.7 million. So we budgeted accordingly this year. We budgeted at that 17 CCF, but if prices go up, unfortunately, that's gonna fall right back on all our shoulders.
So is this go back to the efficiency stuff, or is this population
It
loss?
could be efficiencies of operation, but, I mean, over the last 20 years, they've really, you know, you're talking, I don't know, Basil does a good job, so I'm not gonna say,
Sure.
you know, you as a group approved a contract, and I don't know if you guys were on yet, but there was a contract for ferrochloride that we approved in December, and they would, you know, normally that's a 2-year contract. You're going to now approve a new contract for that chemical the end of March, because they would only give us a 3-month contract, because they didn't know what the price of that stuff was gonna be. And there's no saying, well, let's not buy it. I mean, we're buying it because we have to run that plant. So a lot of the, not fees, the expenses at that plant are the 90 people it takes to run that plant and all the chemicals that Basil talked about, the polymer. And, you know, they use the polymer to harden up the sludge so that they can haul it up to the landfill. And I obviously did not speak as eloquently as he does about that stuff. But, you know, that stuff, and we did that stuff out. We look at co-stars, we look at, you know, federal government pricing, and it is what the fees are what they are, and, you know, we're doing the best we can. So a lot of that is are the contracts for the different chemicals and utilities. You know, we spend $1 million a year, and I don't know, old council people, you guys, have you had a chance to go down and take the tour of wastewater yet? Okay, when you do, I mean, you know, there's just a lot of area down there. We spend $1 million a year on electric bills down there. So,
And that is one of the areas where, I know Michael's talked a lot about savings, and they did switch out a lot of bulbs for, and more
Yes, they did.
energy efficient ones, and I think it may have been in conjunction with no, I'm not sure, but I know a few years ago they were trying to retrofit everything with more efficient lighting, I know that. But Paul, just the meters, Erie adopted the meters in, like, shortly after, late of 2001, so
Was it?
2002, so you were right, it was 20 years, so 20 years of that.
it was right about when I bought my second house. So I do know that. The first house we paid a balance or a fee, and then, so the sewer, that, I mean, the expenses are, you approve all the contracts, the salaries are what the salaries are. So there's not a lot of spending. I mean, most of the spending, and you see that in the list of bills you're gonna approve tonight, is Basil spending is all on repair and maintenance stuff down there. So, the next fund is the refuse and recycling fund. Now, I'm sure everyone had a chance. We budgeted $8.5 million in revenues, and that comes on, you know, the 34,000. We just take 4 quarters times the fee times the amount of houses. Well, when COVID hit in 20, you know, the accounts receivable went way up 2 years ago. And last year, a lot of people started paying their bills. So you're going to see that we're $600,000 over budget in revenues. And what that was people, all the people that were delinquent started paying their bills. So it's not like we had a mad rush or mad building of 5,000 new homes in Erie. It was just the receivables went way down. The next fund that is in there is golf fund. Last year, golf, again, for the second year in a row, golf had a very good year. Hopefully we'll have a dry summer, and golf made $30,000 last year, so got about a couple bucks in the bank with the golf fund. Liquid fuels is the next fund. Liquid fuels is an anomaly. We've already approved as a group an ordinance appropriating some of the money in liquid fuels. Liquid fuels shows a profit last year of $750,000. Well, we get $2.3 million from the state every year, and we're supposed to spend all 2.3 of it, and the paving season just didn't work itself out that we spent all the money, and also we didn't need as much salt last year because 2 winters ago it wasn't as bad as we had expected. So that money, the buildup of cash in the liquid fuels fund will be spent over the next year or so on paving, so that we can get a full paving program going this year.
Can we carry that over from year to year?
Yes. Yeah, we try to keep, $500,000 to $1 million in that bank account as a street, just in case. But, last year we have a little bit more than that. But yeah, the answer no is yes. Capital improvement fund, that's just the money we spend on capital goods. And risk management, we had a very good year again last year. And Chris speaks to that every year at the budget sessions, and maybe we could have Chris come down at a finance committee meeting and talk about some of the new programs that both Highmark and UPMC are running. But we didn't have as many sicknesses last year or maladies that cost us as much money as they usually did. So we had a little bit of a good year in risk management last year.
That's cool.
Yes, sir.
Is that because of the subsidized subsidies that went with people who had COVID? Or?
Michael, they said that in 2020 that that people, they didn't go to the doctors, and then when 21 hit, that they were going to all start going again, and we didn't have our per person per usage amount in 20 it was about normal, and same with 21. Same amount of people went to the doctors. It's just that the per claim was down. Like I might have had brain surgery 2 years ago, and last year all I had was a sprained ankle. So.
Doctor didn't know which end to work.
Yeah, I don't know on me. Hey, I don't know. So we were lucky the last 2 years. Yes, we've been real lucky the last 2 years that our group, and when I say our group, everybody have been a lot healthier. And that could be that, Chris has done a lot of work, and he sends out all those Highmark Healthies, and, I don't know if people pay attention to that stuff, but more people are going to the doctor now, and more people are using their physicians. I mean, as unbelievable as it seems, we do, as everybody knows, we have good insurance here. I mean, we have a high, not anymore, but we used to have a high percentage of people that did not go to the doctors for annual checkups, annual physicals, stuff like that. You'd think, if you have insurance, go to the doctors and get checked out. And, I'm on Lipitor, and I tell everybody that. I'm the worst eater in the world. But, go to the doctors, but our usage was no different than normal. Our dollar usage was down. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I just wondered, because I don't know if it's true or not, but at the corporate level, like they were saying, like in the initial pandemic, it was like, oh, there'll be no cost for, the COVID-related expenses. And so that's like, I wondered if that played a part, or even if it was actually true or factual.
Yeah, I don't know that answer, and Chris could speak to that.
Okay.
I know we got started a little bit late,
Okay.
although we should try and wrap up so we can also
Okay.
get to the caucus.
I don't have anything. The January book, if anyone's had a chance to look at it, and we had 1 month, and we had a couple payrolls, and pretty much nobody bought anything just because January is always a slow month for cash flows. So there's nothing in there other than timing issues, and the revenues, revenues slowly eke in until March or so when the real estate taxes come in. And there's some money, Berkheimer gives us some money for our income taxes and such, but it shows that we collected $4 million and we spent $5 million, which is about normal for the month of January. So, as we get into the year, February, March, April, we'll see a little bit more. So my whole write-up on the January, this one's down and that one's up, I mean, you might as well just throw that out. I wasted 15 or a half hour writing that, because we're just so early in the year, it's very difficult, you know, and with vacations, our biggest revenue collector in January is Berkheimer with our income taxes. You know, if 3 people at the Erie office take vacation, well, obviously they're gonna be behind in what they give us, so January is always a tough month to look at those budget numbers. And so Liz, you're cutting me off.
No,
Next
no,
one.
no, no.
Besides, you know, we talked about last year about me bringing guest speakers down, because I know everyone's sick of listening to me drone on and on and on. But I can, you know, I'll obviously bring the February numbers, and we can look at the February numbers and talk about those. Is there anybody, I mean, like I said, we can bring Chris Moore down to talk about risk management. Would you like Brian King to come down and talk about IT things, some of the new things he's doing, or is that just a rehash of the budget sessions where people
No,
give
I
you
think
an
it would be
update?
good, I think it'd be good for Michael and Chuck.
Just you guys come up and talk to me.
However,
Tell me what you want.
we did have some tweet exchanges with somebody who was asking about our ARP allocation for IT.
I don't know if Jackie's on.
ARP allocation for IT. So it was a question from someone who's out there who,
Mhm.
you know, who thought it wasn't enough of an investment, but we know we have other additional money that is coming from the state for that. So I think that might be a good talk. You could, if these two guys want to come up with
Yeah.
a topic list and then share it with council, and then other people, as you become more familiar with the budget, you know, you're gonna say there are some things that you'd like to find out about, even if we've been around for a while, right, Ed?
We, you know, when Steve Benson was, and I'm going back 10 years, when Steve Benson was running the IT department, he would always talk about, you know, Columbus, Ohio spent $5 million, and Austin, Texas spent $4 million. You know, our IT budget is nowhere near those numbers. But we also spend money on IT in other, I mean, our IT budget is you know, a couple $100,000 of, Frank, don't throw something at me because I don't know your proper terminology. You know, firewalls and just all the things that go around with IT. But we do buy, you know, we buy new computers every year, and that comes out of the capital budget. We buy MDTs for the chief's police cars, and that comes out of the capital budget. So we do spend, I mean, not millions upon millions of dollars, but we do spend dollars on IT that do not show up in the IT budget. But nowhere near, I'm sure that, you know, if we were a city flush with cash, we would spend that money on, because in our way, we have to be frugal about all
Paul,
of
to your suggestion, I think it would be good, because I think we know what those budget sessions are like at the end of the year. They're always crammed, and who knows what might
Yes.
change. I think the more we can learn upfront would be helpful.
No
But I'll
problem.
rely
Yeah,
on
Chuck,
these two
and
guys
Michael, you
to
guys, you know,
come up with
Just
some
add one
topics.
question.
okay.
So the software that we are purchasing, that's going to the,
Code,
going to what?
code enforcement?
Yes.
Because we're getting new software accounting too, which is gonna, I think Ed Williams talked about it on the Tuesday Zoom. We're not getting new software, we're still staying with the Penimation / Central Square company, but we're getting the new version. So, you know, the last version we got was more Windows based, and this one's gonna be a little bit better. So it's been a few years since we got that. So, and we did approve that in the budget last year, $50,000 for that upgrade. So something, you know, we're supposed to be in the hopper, but when we're getting it, who knows?
Right, I just want to know if it was going to be completely integrated into this.
Yes, yes,
into
yes,
the-
yes, absolutely.
And then would IT be running the point on this, or, because I know it's
On
going
the installation,
specifically
yes.
to different departments,
Mm,
and so I just wondered, you know, from a top-down perspective, you know, who has the switches?
Yes, absolutely, Michael. Because, like, Kaz's department integrates with my department. So when they take money in, that shoots into the general ledger, which comes right up to me. The new software we're getting for code enforcement, that's gonna talk to Kaz's stuff about different, you know, what real estate issues there are. But their software is also going to be its own little world where the inspectors are out there and they're looking at their phone or their laptops doing what they do. But it's all going to talk to each other.
And both of those softwares will also integrate with the website that we're working on once all that stuff is flushed out.
Okay. Okay, well, we're gonna hear from the chief, but is there any housekeeping for the agenda tonight? I had a couple of things. First of all, is there anyone we want to remember at the moment of silence? Any suggestions that we remember? Is that?
It's Carla Hughes Day on the 20th.
It's, pardon?
Carla Hughes Day on February 20th.
I guess contractor purchase orders, any questions? I mean, some stuff while I'm still here.
Let me double check.
I mean, I'll
Say
say,
we don't buy stuff in January. Last week was like Christmas.
why?
What?
What did we buy? We bought a truck. You have to understand, you drive up, you're gonna drive home, and you're gonna drive by Hallman's. And there's no cars and trucks in that lot. So, I mean, one of the things, we bought 3 cars for the chief last week. Those cars are 6, 7, 8 months out. So when we're buying these things, this is in anticipation of when we're gonna get that stuff. And I don't wanna steal your thunder, but I think we're gonna talk about for a second about the radios. And as my department's the purchasing department, you know, those things are multiple months out to be able to get those things. So just with this whole, you know, the chips that are made in Malaysia, I guess, that nobody can get a hold of, it is putting a backlog on our ability to buy anything. So, Dan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had a grant on radios that, for the sheriff's department. We were partnered on a grant, and they needed 2 radios. Because the paperwork was our grant, we put through it took 6 months to get 2 radios for the sheriff's department. You know that we're county-wide. The county has these new radios they bought a few years ago. They're encrypted for the police side of the house. But we can talk to fire departments, police departments anywhere in Erie County.
That was kind of like when you couldn't hear the scanners anymore, right? Yeah.
Right. Now, fire and ambulance you can hear, but like today there was a shooting. There was a shooting up at the 90 and Beach Street at the hotel.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had a serious situation and needed help, they would have been able to go to our radio channel and talk to us direct, where we never had that possibility before.
I saw some in the news today about some kid playing around getting on the emergency channel.
Hey, about that.
All right. I think that's weird.
There was some guy who got in trouble, a ham radio operator.
Oh, ham radio
got
operator.
arrested.
Yeah, the ham radio's different.
But I don't know if
Frequency,
that,
that's not us.
Yeah.
I saw, that was under the Erie ham radio guy who got charged
Yeah,
with reporting, like, weird weather or something. It was like,
He was
it was
making
odd.
he was making up fake weather emergencies, but he was also kept saying there was a bomb at the Erie Police
That's
Station.
right.
There was a bomb at the Bicentennial Tower, courthouse, and things like that.
So what frequency was he on?
A ham channel.
So it wasn't an actual.
It wasn't one of our channels. A private, or I'm sorry, the general open band that ham radios operate.
So, I mean, I think the issue that comes out of that is that it's 21 radios for the 21 new officers. And the issue is that the final rule came out just a couple weeks ago, and our standard deduction, the thing that we are able to offer on the 5, that we currently have budgeted at $5 million, city revenue replacement, it's on page 246 and 247 of it, explains that now we can have 10 million.
Correct.
So where do we find that other $5 million? Because most of this stuff is community economic development, housing, infrastructure. It's costs that are going into further investment and growth that have already gone out the door. And the only thing I've seen that hasn't gone out the door yet is police money, and that's a large liability on our books 5 years from now. So I'm trying to figure out where we get $5 million back into our coffers that's now allowed since the beginning of January, as the rules have adjusted. since setting the budget. It was rushed and had been done before January 1st, and the final rule came out after.
I don't think it was rushed. I think that the rules obviously got longer. Can you point to something that says that the rules for police changed in the final rules?
Oh, no, not police.
Okay.
The
But
matter is,
I think you two guys are interpreting that $10 million in a different way than it's been explained to me. Well, I think you are.
Well, I'm saying that's not where there's a.
Can we just be honest here? I want to know, you're using the radios as a way to say that you don't want to vote for additional police, which we've already voted for. I think it's a bad precedent that we might be changing midstream. This is what the county executive is trying to do, and I don't understand it. So let's
I think
put
it's
the
concerned
cards
that
on
we
the
set our
table.
stream before the rules came out.
Chuck, we had no choice but to start moving forward on that.
We got
Those
ideas.
rules are, I mean, if you're an expert on ARP, good for you. But I have been on webinars on this for almost a year. I think first one I attended was in March. And I know that the National League of Cities, the Pennsylvania Municipal League has been tracking all of that, so.
This final rule, just so we're clear, the reason it happened, as I understand it, is I represent a lot of smaller municipalities. So let's just take Waterford Borough. Waterford Borough has no staff to administer ARP funds, but they were eligible to get a chunk of money. But they can only spend it on certain things, but they don't have anybody to run it. Who's going to fill out the paperwork? And so everything has to be spent on a specific item that's authorized under ARP. With the new rule that we're talking about, this 10 million, if you've got less than 10 million, you don't have to worry about that. You just get to take the money and spend it as you want, rather than try to jump through hoops. So the paperwork to fill out at the end of the process is very difficult for Waterford Borough. How am I going to fill all this out? I don't know what we did. Now we're less than 10 million. We got less than 10 million, we just take it, we're good.
And
So that's,
it's
So would that say
very
zero?
difficult to fill out that.
well, I'm oversimplifying,
Yeah,
but it's a whole lot less
If
than
Jack
it
was on
was.
that Zoom, she would not like to hear that.
Well, I'm not saying, it's a whole lot less
Yeah,
than it was. And so everybody but Mill Creek, Erie, and Pittsburgh on our side of the state has a whole lot less burden to deal with. The city, Mill Creek, and Pittsburgh still have, they got more than 10 million. You've got more of a burden to deal with.
So it wasn't designed for a city that got $76 million to be able to just say, we don't have to account for this. Is what I have been told when I listened to you.
So, I was trying to confirm this with Ms. Free, earlier, or yesterday, I don't know if she got back to me. But there is a provision in there when it's under acceptable uses of ARP, and it says you can use it to hire, for COVID-related, things. But it said that it also capped it at 7% of the baseline, which 7% of 175 is 13. And so I had her going back to look through the guidelines because that's something that she didn't see in the guidelines, and I didn't have a chance to go back and look for it. But
Michael, I think Jackie has responded to that
did she?
via email. And there may be a little bit of a misunderstanding by everybody on how that is supposed to work itself out. And she and I talked about this, and she's pretty comfortable with the 21 number. That percentage that's written down or that's shown in the rules, there's like an A, and B, and a C clause to it that, maybe we could have Jackie come down and speak to this, just for your understanding. But I know she did respond via email, because
Okay,
I got a copy of it.
Okay.
So my big concern is that we have 5 million that doesn't have to be designated for police, that is now able to be preserved so that as we're running a deficit in 5 years, then we don't have the $4.5 million liability of 21 more cops. I understand you talked about attrition and surge, but I mean, I also, like Ed had pointed out during that study session, am concerned about how do we get a guy that, lets people go 4 or 5 years from now.
Well, again, we know that we turn over at least 10 officers a year.
Yeah.
So we can get to year 4 and start the reduction by not replacing officers. That's the downgrade. Nobody gets laid off, but through attrition, we know we lose 10 officers or more a year. This will eliminate by the 5th year. So it's just kind of like a surging wave.
So for Paul.
Yeah.
So as our police force is getting younger and has been getting younger, are we still going to be maintaining, the average of 10 officers a year? It would seem like that wouldn't be the case.
That average has been what's happened the last 10 years. I mean,
Right, how many?
like, I can't say.
How many people have been hired in the last 10 years?
Well, we've averaged losing 8 to 10 every year.
So
for
if
the
we have
last 10
100,
years.
that
And the
means
chief
probably have 100 people that are somewhere between 20 and 40.
So we're actually, our the department has just gone over the edge now. In 2005, officers that were here and got laid off. Tom Legacy being the last officer hired. He worked there about 9 months, and that's when the city laid off 40 officers. It took him almost 3 years to get called back. So you got 9 months, you got 3 years, and then even after they called him back, the next hire wasn't for over a year. So there's a 5-year gap in the police department. Usually we're replacing 8 to 10 guys a year. Well, there's 5 years there that nobody was hired. So half of the department right now has at least 17 plus years on the job, or the lower half has less than 12. So that higher group is the retirements are gonna continue
So,
at least the next 10 years.
so what kind of deficit are we planning for those years at the end of ARC, that we would then have that liability of 10 extra cops and 20 extra cops?
It
Just
shouldn't be
keep on
any.
talking extra bucks. It's not happening unless we're very fortunate at the end of the year. This first hire only brought us back to what we had, 173.
No, but I'm talking about the radios for them. Do we have to buy radios for cops that we don't have to hire this summer, so that we can put 5 million back into the bucket instead of spending it on cops?
I think the letter the chief sent us told us about the time it takes to get there.
Do we need all 21 of those?
You wanna know, do we need all 21 police officers, not do we need all 21 radios?
Right, and we have to make a decision if we need all 21 police officers. Now that we
Made
know,
that decision.
now, but you made it without the information of the final rule.
Well, the other thing to keep
I
in
want you to
mind,
go to county council and tell them, hey, yeah, go ahead, cut the money for the community college, cut the money for the diversity inclusion, because the final rule wasn't around.
here's the
That's
other,
a foolish
I
argument.
think they may have 4 votes on that, because they may need to readdress this.
sure,
Then good, we're gonna be in worse trouble then.
175 right now.
Is there that based on like the size of our city? How do we determine the number of police?
Based on the budget, the city can maintain.
Okay, so it's not based on like, New York City needs this, Erie would need this for the size of town.
No, it's based
It's based on
on,
budget.
There was, 5 years ago in the budget handout book, I used to put this document. The FBI says the average city should have about 1.8 officers per 100,000. So, well, that's with all the
We'll go with 1.8.
Yeah, no,
That's 7 with stick. Well, actually, that puts us really close. But,
well, he's looking that up. My point
No,
about,
I'm
my point about the radios,
really, it's a capital purchase. So as we go, the county went to the full band radio about 4 years ago. And we've already lost 2 of the radio, not lost, but they were broken during arrest. So what we're gonna, we only have maybe 4, I think we have 4 spares. 2 of them have already broke. What we're looking at is over the course of the next 5 years, this is a capital purchase. These radios will be here. So as those officers fade away, those radios will actually become the replacements for the radios that might break, because we're on the hook to buy any future radios. So we're using this ARP money really as a capital purchase, because we know those radios will fail, they'll break, they get beat up during arrests and stuff like that. So we'll have those as spares.
But you're still buying 21 because of the 20 officers.
Right, exactly.
We're not, you didn't buy a couple spares.
Well, we have.
But I'm saying
what
these
they are,
will be spares that will
So
depart right down
what
the
is
road.
so as technology changes, what's the expected lifespan of a radio?
About 10 years.
About 10 years. Okay.
I mean, we try to string them up. I mean, this is a new system for the county. So what we have now, we hope is going to get strung out as long as possible. It's a brand new system. So it's not like we're going to change radio systems in the future. These will be the radios we use.
Because that was the question, because we obviously went to a different type of radio just in the past couple of years, countywide, citywide.
Right.
So that was the question about, as technology changes, whether we have to reinvest into another radio system and into additional radios, and the 20 that are sitting on the shelf will be unusable.
They'll be usable when these officers are gone, and they will be our replacements. They will be.
Yeah, barring no changes. So I'm hoping that I haven't conferred with the county on, or any other entity on, the lifespan of the new radio towers and the systems.
Still in clarification, are we talking about radios, or are we talking about those 21 cops that are
I'm talking about the 21 cops, and if they even hear.
Okay.
So there's two different things. One, it's one, and whether it's one, if it's necessary, and then two is that will it still have valuation no matter what the outcome is of the discussions.
The whole thing about the
just like
way
she
hiring
wrote
the
so
extra
much.
officers and the equipment
Liz
that
wrote
comes
so
with
much
it
that
is that the equipment will remain even as that surge goes away. Any capital purchases remain, vehicles, radios, any of that kind of equipment.
So even with the surge, we're not going to show for this in 5 years.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Yes. We're gonna have to.
We're going to have $5 million.
This is gonna be real quick.
she's in economic and community development.
We need the police, the new police hire. We need them. If you don't think we need them, then tell that mother whose son got shot. Tell that mother whose son got shot in the back. Tell that mother whose son got shot on McClellan.
Swearing in is tomorrow at 11.
I know that the police cannot stop a shooting because they're not there. But if we have a full comp,
February 7th.
we can get there a lot quicker than if we don't have it.
And it's in here?
I'm not worrying about 5 years from now. I'm worried about my kids getting killed right here. Damn, 5 years from now. You may be dead from 5 years from now.
That's absolutely a possibility on everyone's. And so, when you run out of deterrence, enforcement. When enforcement is a last resort mechanism for society. Once you get to the point where you have to add more police far as I'm concerned, you're a failed state. If that's your only solution, that's a failing state, and it's not coming back because you hired more police. And so,
But the issue is, we're not bringing on more enforcement officers. We're bringing on a crisis car, juvenile detectives, those with the social service agencies. We're trying to do what the rest of the country is doing. We had crisis car before any other places did. We had a crisis car in the 70s. Erie was ahead of the curve and much more progressive on that side. Because of budgets, it went away. We're just trying to bring that back. Now, it's tough, I agree. It's tough to measure those intangibles, but we think the program we're gonna set up is gonna carry over.
The other thing is page 51 of the final rule actually addresses the violence issue. Page 51 actually addresses it, and they give other examples in St. Louis City and Los Angeles County, where they're doing community responder model to provide clinical help and divert non-violent calls away from the police department so that we can do that more efficiently. And Los Angeles does a Care First Jail Last program. The examples that were given in the final rule, actually, none of them are extra cops.
Hey, I lived in St. Louis. I don't know that anybody would want to trade places and go from Erie to St. Louis.
We are working with
Yeah.
the mental health agency, domestic violence, crime victim. They are partnered as part of that crisis service, so I just was hoping I could answer the question.
How many of the officers behind, as far as minorities, how many, is there